Yeah, thank you, Venu and Yutmei. I think it's a real pleasure to be here. I mean, I know this space well. I remember a time when we used to meet at your house for a physical meeting. I really missed that. I think there was some amazing get-togethers and very warm, what do you call welcomes every time. I hope we can get back to that at some stage. That'll be amazing. Um, so I was going to talk to you about Bukit Kiara. Of course, it's and the focus was to do with the role of the community, because I think a lot which has happened in Bukit Kiara is actually very much tied with the community who live around there, and also who have been supporting the Green Lung in many different ways. So I'd like to do this probably in sort of three parts. The first part would be going through a bit of history, which a lot of people don't know about, how we got here in terms of the current situation. And then, I'll spend a bit of time with FOBK itself and the kind of activities we're doing and why we're doing it. And then maybe end off with a particular project where we are, engaging with the community to gather data and so on. And I think that's quite an exciting thing. And I'll have a few other pointers at the end if time allows. So maybe to start with, I think, of course, we are dealing with an impact of biodiversity due to development, and this is the statistics are very grim and very alarming. But I think there are some amazing stories about how green lungs, which have been left without development for some years, have really basically make their comeback. And I think this is what is so interesting, because I think there's hope in that sense, where if we can somehow stop this madness in terms of the way development takes place, I think there's hope to rejuvenate many of our green lungs, and there are many examples all over the world. And in fact, to a small extent, Bukit Kiara is one of them, and I'll come back to that a bit later. So to start with, I think this image is one of Klang Valley, and you can see how much of that green is lost. We are very densely developed in Klang Valley, a lot of grey there. But in the there are some pockets of green, and this is what I think we are all trying to preserve and protect, because if we lose these pockets, I think it's going to make a huge difference to our livelihoods. So maybe in terms of a bit of history, let me start with talking about what are we really trying to conserve here. And I think here the history becomes quite important. In fact, the setting up and the development of Kuala Lumpur is very much tied with some of these major estates which were there. So in 1974, when the whole concept of enlarging the federal city of KL came into being, one of the ways they did this was to actually acquire estates, which were basically looked upon as building blocks of development. So I think this is where this thing started. So Bukit Kiara, why was it so special in that sense? There are probably three things which are quite very unique. One was that when government acquired Bukit Kiara, there was a very clearly stated requirement that this was supposed to be for public purpose and for national interest. So they were talking about, and clearly stated in the documentation, that there would be a national botanical gardens set up here. So of course, Taman Persekutuan today is nowhere near a botanical gardens, and this is something which we need to reflect on. The other is the issue of moral accountability, in the sense that this piece of land, some 1,500 acres or whatever, was purchased with taxpayers' money for a particular purpose. And also the former landowners were not paid commercial rates. They were paid, rates because it was going to be used for national interest. They were given, sort of a public rates, if you like. And so all of these moral accountabilities have, to some extent, been lost in this area. And I'll come back to that in the next couple of slides. And of course, these were supposed to be flagship urban forest parks, not only in Bukit Kiara, but many others which were intended. But of course, we know that many of these have been, basically have been developed to a large extent. So this is one of the notices. You can see Three of the estates were identified: Bukit Kiara, Bukit Jalil, and Hothenton Estate. So you can see that in the map. Kiara with the marked K, Hottenton Estate marked H, and Bukit Jalil marked J. So these were acquired about at the same time, and the idea was that to expand that 93 square kilometers of original KL into what it is today. So that's part of that history, and I think that's where it starts. The journey, if you like. So then we move, 20 years down the line. In fact, maybe we should start with 1957, because that's the original gazettement. If you look at the map on the right, I think, which is quite interesting, the area marked G is in fact what is today the Penchala estate, the Malay reservation area. And this was actually gazetted in 1916, right? Well before these adjacent lands were given out for estate development. And that was quite fortuitous in a sense, because that green lung was to a large extent protected in this particular area, because there was literally no developments taking place here. So moving on 20 years down the line, in 1976, as I already mentioned, government acquired this land from Eng Chen Sui Estates, some rubber estates, for public purpose. And there was a basic program, or in fact, there was a very well and masterfully done master plan for turning this into a botanical garden. So I have that master plan, the original one, in my office. It's an amazing piece of document. But of course, unfortunately, that didn't materialize. So by about 1990, it became obvious that there was going to be developments. But initially, the first part of developments were basically, institutional development. So it wasn't so bad. And this was in the area marked D. You can see where you had things like the development of Intan, Pusara Negara was talked about, and so on and so forth. So then, in fact, the Pusara Negara was in fact in the area called B. That was supposed to be the National Mausoleum. Then this, of course, gave way to a public golf course, which is there today. And then, we moved on to the 1990s to the early 2000s, when many of these parcels were given out. The Equestrian Club came up, there was the commercial golf club, and so on and so forth. But I'd like to just focus on a couple of key areas here. So the area A here is what is today left of the green lung, the 400 acres we are trying to gazette. So if you go down to B, I've already mentioned, is the public golf course now. C is quite important, of course. All of you may have been following this. This is the Taman Rimba Kiara, and we've been fighting to stop the development there. And this is 25 acres of green lung. And at the very edge of that area C is our longhouse development, or the longhouse people who have been subject to a lot of development pressures. People have been coming in to try and get them to move out so that this whole area can be developed. So there is that history of the longhouse, which is very much entwined with the rubber estate, because these people, the 100 households, were basically the rubber estate workers of the Intan Sui estate, and even going back many generations there. So they were forced to move when the land was sold to government, and they were told that within a year of this temporary housing, the longhouses, they would be moved to permanent housing. And 40 years later, these families are still living there with very, very bad housing. And this is something which has been, toing and froing with the politicians over the years. And this is something which we have been working very hard to try and, resolve. I can come back to that later. And then moving on, of course, there was a lot of activity between the 1990s and in the years 2000 onwards. And this actually led to the cabinet announcement to have what is called a Taman Awan Berskala Besar, the TABB, which was supposed to have been gazetted at that time. But of course, as we know very well, it never happened. That was during Badawi's time. Then when the new government took over, this was all put into abeyance. And then, we really got into quite a mess. But of course, we've had some success. In 2020, we did manage to gazette part of the forest. And I'll come back to that story. So what we have now today is basically this. The green lung, which we are trying to protect, in green here. The yellow bordered area is Taman Rimba Kiara, which of course is a very important part of this whole original estate, but now separated. It's under DBKL, whereas the green area, Bukit Kiara, is the Jabatan landscape. Just before I move on this, Taman Rimba Kiara is very unique in many ways. It's a bird sanctuary. It was originally developed as basically the nursery for Kuala Lumpur. And it's really unfortunate that it's been under so much pressure for change. And if we lose this, we are going to lose a lot of very, very important bird life with it as well. So let me just move on to the gazettement. Of course, as all of you may have been following, last year, or rather in 2020, we were able to gazette 2/3 of the 400 acres, something like 275 acres. Some 126 acres is still left. The reason for doing this in two parts was that the gazetted this land, there's 51 hectares or the 125 acres was still under lease to a private company, and so either we waited till 2027 and do it all together, or we did this partially, and we opted to do it partially for obvious reasons, so that at least to get this whole process going. So the promise is that in 2027, when the leases run out, the rest of the land will become gazetted. But of course, there is no guarantee that this is going to happen. And we need to step up our game to make sure that this is actually going to go on. So WK is very much involved with various community organizations to keep this in view over the next couple of years. But in the meantime, we're working quite closely with JLand to see how we can, get the community to participate more in the protection and the type of things which are going on in the green line. So to just finish off on this segment of my talk on the history, I think we should recognize that Bukit Kiara is, in fact, a bit of an outlier in many ways. The gazettement was to some extent, we've been at it for, as you will see in some of the slides to come, at it for almost 30 years. And this window of opportunity came because of change of government, the fact that we had a very strong MP, Hannah Yeoh, who had taken on board, this as part of her deliverables, and has been very consistent. And so all of this has come together, and the fact that we've had a very strong community base to make this gazettement happen. So it's not something which has happened, just out of the ordinary in that sense. So I think the important message here for us is that as communities, we need to really speak up. We need to develop our alliances, and ultimately, we need to start making changes to the law and policy and get policy reform. Because without that, even the gazettement we have can be very easily taken away. So there's a lot of work to be done, and I think this can only be done through community efforts, because it's not going to come in a platter to us. So that's the thing. So basically, for us, the gazettement is just a start of another journey, right? Not an end in itself. So I think this is something which I think we have to recognize. So how did we get here? As I said, this was a rubber plantation. Fortunately, we had the Malay Reserve lands, which was adjacent to this. And with the fact that this biodiversity was still there and adjacent to this the rubber estate, has now led to the secondary forest being developing. And since about 2009, there has been also a program of planting, hardwood trees and so on. 34,000 trees have been planted. There's been a lot of attrition of these trees, but at least this program has started, and I think it's been good in that sense. And so, based on what we know now, I think there's been an incredible biodiversity in Bukit Kiara, and hopefully this is something which we can protect and move forward with. So coming back to FOBK and Friends of Bukit Kiara, basically it was set up as a community non-profit organization, the basic idea was preservation of Bukit Kiara and the Green Lung. And then, the vision was to basically set up something to pursue with gazettement. But of course, since we have made some progress there, we are now evolving into championing the long-term appreciation and conservation of the biodiversity of this area. So I think this is something which we are working very hard to do. With the full gazettement appel, of course, hopefully we can protect Kiara and stop all the regressive steps which are potentially there all the time with the development pressures. And hopefully we can resist this as we go along. So what is there in Bukit Kiara? There are a lot of very interesting things. Not many people know that the sources of three rivers is in Bukit Kiara: Sungai Pentala, Sungai Kayuara, and also Sungai Toba. And of course, the green lung acts as a sponge to control flash floods and downstream. And it's quite interesting that in the recent floods, we actually, for the first time in Kiara's history, or in Taman Tun's history, we actually had the riverbank partially collapse because of the ferocity of the water, but still we did not have any flooding, thankfully. And because there's this green lung does provide a lot of controls, whereas on the Pentala link side, there's less so because the development has been unbridled. There's been a lot of cutting down of the green lung in the last 10 years or so, and so there's increasingly flooding incidences in Kiara. The green lung itself is visited by something like 7,000 people every weekend. This is JLN statistics. This is before the pandemic, and there's a series of activities that I'll come back to. So you can see that the biodiversity is there, and if you haven't visited Kiara, do contact us. We can easily, organize trips into the green lung because it's just quite amazing, both in terms of flora and fauna. And so it's a bit of a gem, and I think something which we really hope we can. I really spend a lot of time there on hikes and so on and so forth. And something which we hope we can continue to do. We are told that Kuala Lumpur has a huge amount of green spaces, something like 30% of green spaces. But what we are not told is that in that calculation, they take into consideration, things like golf courses, green lung, gated communities, etc., etc. So if you really drill down, we have less than 9% of open spaces in Kuala Lumpur for recreation, and this is something which is totally unacceptable. Doesn't meet the UNDP requirements and so on, which we have all signed up to as a country. And our goals to achieve this in 2030 and 2050 are really not, will not stand up to scrutiny if you really start going into it. Of course, public spaces are vital, and this has become even more obvious in the last couple of years with the pandemic for our healthy living and our real mental state of mind. So again, the protection of this becomes quite important. For us, the key really has been in the last couple of years has been working in coordination with our other CBO friends, the community-based organizations, NGOs, and so on, and also, of course, developing a relationship with the municipality here, and more importantly, increasing the participation of the public. I think that is the strength which we will have if we can take this forward. So we've been doing a lot of things. One of the things we have started to do was having dialogues with our green lung partners so that we can share experiences and see how we can work together. Because I think, as just one green lung, we have a certain, obviously reach. But if all the green lungs and all the community organizations get together, I think we can be very, very powerful indeed. And this is something which we hope can develop over the years. And in terms of the engagement with the government, we were supposed to have a roundtable with various government agencies and stakeholders. But with the pandemic, it didn't happen. But we are hoping that coming May, we will have this meeting. In terms of events, FOBK have been involved in various things. Earth Day was something we looked at. We started celebrating in 2019, the big physical event. But of course, the last 2 years, it's all been online. And then we've had all these different activities which we've been developing over time. But a lot of it has been truncated, again, because of the pandemic, but we hope we can get into this. So these are the activities we have been developing, and hopefully we can continue to develop as we go along. Some of our partners and collaborators, as you can see, I think there's a growing recognition that the various NGOs and CBOs must work together, and hopefully in the next coming years, this will become we'll be able to share resources, share experiences, and develop together with common goals for the Klang Valley and for of course for the country as a whole. Just again, some of the activities. I won't spend too much time with this. If you go into our website, a lot of this information is there. But the idea is, again, to spread information, to tell people about the green lung, and basically get people connected. I think that's very, very important. And we've also got some very young members who are involved with Kiara, also because one or two of our members are very involved in this area, and they have got their grandchildren involved, which is amazing. And so that's fantastic. And of course, because we have been doing these things online over the last couple of years, we've had traction from all over the world. People have actually, been involved in our events, which has been very interesting in terms of, how we've been moving forward. Of course, engaging with the media has been very important, trying to get that message across. We've had quite a bit of success with that. And of course, like everyone else, we're trying to, use the social media and making a small progress. But I think, there's a lot more to be done. So let me sort of go on to some of the things we're doing at this point in time, and give you a flavor of the things to come. One of the things I mentioned was the fireflies. This journey actually started sometime in 2017. One of our members spotted some fireflies, just like Hari was mentioning earlier this hour in Puchong. So maybe Hari, you can start something here with the Puchong community. But yeah, so this is how it started. Somebody looked at it. Then we got MNS involved, and we were amazed with the initial visit we did. Sunny, who you've mentioned, who has done a talk also with you, was quite involved, and said to us, look, the Lampagera, the land-based fireflies we have discovered in Bukit Kiara, one of the largest in the world. So it suddenly started to give a different dimension to fireflies in Bukit Kiara. And so we started to organize public events. And suddenly we realized, our events, which were attended by 20, 30 people, were now being attended by 100 to 200 people, because there was so much interest, So it was a recognition of that. We started to spend a bit more time to see whether we could do some further studies. And we were quite fortunate. We managed to get some funds in November of 2019, engaged with a couple of scientists. And we did a short study for about a month or so, and with also with the MNSs involved and so on, we were able to basically get a baseline set of information based on which we were able to then do a much more bigger application for funds through the Small Grants program which UNDP runs. That was in November 2020. So let me give you a bit of a flavor of that, because I think it's quite interesting as to how we can use this as a way of engagement and getting people more invested in the green lung. So this is the topic of that project, which we started in January of 2021, called the Magical Mysteries at Bukit Kiara. It's a citizen science research project, which was being funded by basically our partners. You can see the logos there, the Small Grants program. And of course, we've been very involved. We've got JLN, the Jabatan Landscape, very involved with this. They've been providing support, access. We've had access to the green lung even during the lockdown because of this research project. Of course, with a lot of strict controls. So they've been very helpful in terms of this thing moving forward. Our collaborative partners are FRIM, UBI, the Urban Biodiversity Initiative, and also MNS. And FRIM and UBI have actually been very involved in reviewing the data we've been collecting over the last couple of months. So this is the project, how the citizen science. It's basically a development of a citizen science protocol to see how we can train people to develop and gather data. And then we have done this field surveys with our scientists, with the citizen scientists as well. And then, of course, formalizing this research into a volunteer program, and then also using the information for engagement with our stakeholders, and which is what we are going to do next in the next couple of months. So this has been a very interesting journey for us, and it's also given us some a real insight into how we can use our community to provide the kind of basis for protection of green lungs. So this is the journey. It started with our engagement. Then the grant was received in January. Got the experts in the field. They started to train our citizen scientists. We had some workshops. And then the field survey started in July last year, and will be ongoing till probably next month now. And then the data analysis will be done, and then we will do some workshops, both technical as well as sharing the findings with citizen scientists as well, and then maybe engaging with the local authority and so on to see how important this is. And then we will close this chapter of the project in May, hopefully. So you can see we started our recruitment process in April 2021 through the social media, and we now have something like about 80 over citizen scientists in the books who have been coming regularly, and I'll show you some of the projects which we have been doing with them. And then we've also had some of our B40 community involved. The Longhorse community, we've engaged with them. Some of the younger generation there have got involved, which I think has been very useful. And as I said, we've had some junior members of our team. They've also come out into the in terms of the data gathering, which has been really very interesting. So it's amazing if you can infuse an 8-year-old to do this, and with the right what do you call outlets. It's amazing how much they can do, and it's been quite a pleasure working with some of our very young members in that sense. So what we're doing is we have, so I say, about 80 over people who've been involved with this data gathering in some way or the other. And out of that, maybe about 10 to 12 have shown a lot of interest. And the idea is then to develop these citizen scientists into our ambassadors. So they will then become our conduits for long-term, work on the Green Lung, as well as data gathering on an ongoing basis, but also to take tours, take people into the Green Lung, over time, so that we can get appreciation of how important, how beautiful this place is in the coming years. So these are the type of surveys we've done. We had a day survey as well as 2 types of night surveys. The day survey was basically to understand the food source, what's the sort of the green the changing landscape over a 1-year period. What we did was, or what the scientists did was, we selected 16 waypoints around Bukit Kiara on Google Map, and these were always the same places where we did the monitoring. So the idea was then to see whether there was going to be change over seasons, over time, and we have not seen the outputs of the data yet, but I think it'd be very interesting to see what the scientists come back with this data. And so these have been done by our citizen scientists as well as the scientists involved, and it's been quite instructive. So we produced a lot of data of information to share, videos of how these surveys are done, so that when people go, they have some background to this information, and then data gathering offline when we are basically on site. So that's the day survey. So there's some distinct things that we done there, and then the night surveys are basically to identify the Lampagera and the other fireflies. We do measurements. So as we go along, when we discover fireflies, we take them selectively. We measure their length and their size, so that there's documentation of what we have. Then as we go up, we measure them, and when we come down, we remeasure. The scientists have taught us ways of marking these fireflies, so that we don't recount them a second time. So it's been a very interesting journey, actually, for all of us, and it's been quite exciting. And I think maybe Hari, you can give us a bit of a feedback on some of his experiences afterwards. And so we've produced this, and there's some guidelines and so on and so on. So then the other night survey is basically sampling of the other aspects, looking at the fireflies on the road, as well as looking at the food which the fireflies use, the snails and so on. And so it's basically looking at the whole biodiversity of how these fireflies are existing and why they're existing, and how maybe with the data we can help enhance this area for the future. So it's been a very, very interesting journey, and we are hoping that we can use the same sort of methodology to study other species in Kiara and elsewhere. It's been very interesting in that sense. So this is the magical mysteries of Bukit Kiara. This is an image of the very large Lampagera. You can see there, and there'll be a lot more coming from here, because in the next few months there'll be data. We'll be having some public events, so look out for that in our website, as well as please stay in contact with that. So just to finish off, of course, I started off talking about Taman Rimba Kiara, and we've been involved. In fact, in this image, Taman Rimba Kiara is just further down here, not far, and that has. We were able to win the case last year, but of course, unfortunately, DBKL is taking this back up to federal court. So we have another battle at our hands to try and stop the TRK development. But of course, that's not the only development which we are looking at. Unfortunately, in the last couple of months, there has been another land. I mentioned to you these NGO lands. These are really the areas around here, as you can see in the image here, which were designated as NGO lands, low-rise developments. But two of the lots have not been developed at all. And this is the National Council for Women's Organizations, which has one of the lots. They, for whatever the reason, decided that because they had this land, invited a developer to come in to propose high-rise development here in this area, which obviously is not meeting the original intent of this area. And so this is something which we have now been having to also take up in court, because obviously many of these changes to the land in this area have been done without any notification. So we have taken up a judicial review again with the community participation, and in fact we just had the hearing on the 6th of January, and the judge, Dr. Ahmed Kamal, has in fact allowed for the judicial review to proceed. In fact, the DBKL and the developer were trying to stop this from us taking this action. But it's unfortunate, but this is something we have to do as a community. But it's a never-ending process, and we have to be very alert to some of these developments going on. So this is set for case management next week. So hopefully, we will have our lawyers there and we'll take it forward. Of course, all of this saps a lot of energy. We have to raise funds, and it's not right. The whole intent, as my starting point of this discussion, was that this whole green lung was in fact intended to be basically a national botanical garden. It's supposed to be the green lung for all of Kuala Lumpur to enjoy. We've lost 3/4 of it. And there's still further pressures now. Where what is the remnants of the green lung are being forced into development. So I think the kind of work which we do is important, but I think there's a lot more to be done. I think this is where we're trying to get the community involved. We're trying to get a bigger play in terms of how we can move forward. So in that sense, our call to action is please come and join us. FOBK is not only for people living around the green lung. We have, I think, about a very large percentage of the people who use the green lung are in fact from outside of Taman Tun. We've actually done a survey of this, which I can share if required at some stage. Of course, we can become a scientist, a citizen scientist, and be involved in some projects which we are thinking about. Not only this one we are doing with the Fireflies, but there's a much greater biodiversity study which we need to do. I think that's something which we can do, but we need help, volunteers, and of course fundraising. And we can't do without funds, obviously. Yeah? Whether it's community-based funds or funds from various organizations which actually can help. And then of course volunteer. We are hoping to restart our trail walks, and we need help with our booths. We're trying to have regular booths so that we can tell people about green lung and what they can do and how they can help. And finally, of course, to just grow our presence. So that's something which we need to do on a continuous basis, basically. So with that, I will end, and hopefully we can have a bit of a question and answer and dialogue, and take it from there. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Kriban. I'm so glad you agreed to speak to us, because really up until today, I've always thought, FOBK is all about just the gazettement of that plot of land,
Yeah.
So I didn't know the amount of work that that you have, your organization or your group of friends have evolved into. I mean, first of all, I have to congratulate you and your friends and your team for getting that gazetted.
Yeah.
And for breaking into two parts, get this gazetted first and working on the other piece later. I think that's a brilliant achievement. Yeah. And then over and above that, you have then evolved to, I was very excited to see that in 2017, you said someone spotted fireflies. Now, my first question in my head was, the place where they initially spotted the fireflies, is it in the rehabilitated area, or it was in the virgin jungle area? But if it's a rehabilitated area, what it means is the fireflies have then come back to that place.
Indeed, yeah. In fact, the night walks and all that we do are all in the rehabilitated areas.
Wow.
So it's amazing. As I was saying, that the biodiversity is just incredible.
So the fireflies came back, and of course, someone beautifully spotted it. Yeah. And then just because of that, over a couple of years, all of you have come together and put together something so systematic and structured, and now leading to this magical mysteries. Yeah. I really applaud the team for the not just systematic, but it's very consistent, systematic, structured way of moving something that your spot and moving into a very organized action about it. Yeah. So my question is this: what is, we have heard of other NGOs, we have heard of other groups of people who are always fighting for causes, but what do you think is the, maybe 3 success factors of why this group of FOBK is so successful?
Well, it's an interesting question. I think the point about FOBK is that it's come out of community action. If you remember when I talked about the history, and maybe I didn't emphasize it enough. When the rubber estate, when it became obvious that the original plan to have a botanical garden and so on was starting to fade in the early 90s. By the mid 90s, the RA, the Taman Tun Dr. Ismail Residence Committee gathered at people to start taking some action. So there was a lot of signature campaigns, and meetings with the MPs and so on. And what was very interesting is that right from the beginning, even at the time, the MP, Dr. Tan, was in fact with Gerakan, right? And he was part of the national, Barisan National Government, and still very much involved. So there was very much a bipartisan view about the green lung and how we should protect it at that time. But unfortunately, over the years, it became very much, polarized in that sense. Then, of course, all the other MPs who came after him were the other MPs after him, Mr. Lim, and then, of course, Hanayo, with DAP, and they were, very, very involved also with the protection. What I'm saying to you is that the community action already started in the 90s, and then by the year 2000. We had one of our residents. In fact, he's also a fellow engineer, I.R. Liu. He's passed now, unfortunately. But he was literally a barefoot crusader, because I remember I've been living in Taman Tun since the 90s, and he was not very far from where I was living in Taman Zappa. You would go for a walk, and you would see him, and he would capture you for half an hour to tell you about the green lung, because he was so passionate, right? And of course, he was doing this to everybody, and so he started that sort of grassroots type movement, with his passion. And then by 2020, by the year 2000, there was a loose committee already set up, which wasn't called FOBK yet, but Liu was the interim president or interim chairman or whatever, and so. From that 2020 to 2014, when FOBK was formalized, you can see there was already 15 years of activity with people on the ground, doing things and so on. So there's a very rich history, and this is why I think the community here has been very much involved, being the driving force. And I think if not for that, maybe we would not have had the sort of end results we've had in the last couple of years. We've been very fortunate in the last 6 or so years. We've come on the strength of all of that and put some structure to it. Where we've got our FOBK registered with with the what do you call with the authorities, all these things. We've got a committee structure and so on and so on. But I think your question is a very apt one. I think if not for all of this development and all this history, it would have probably been very different. How we would have been able to move forward. And of course, we were very fortunate also when our FOBK got formalized in 2014. That Tan Sri Saleh was our first president. What a better icon, right? To come to the fray, and he was already getting on with his in age, but he took on the challenge, kept everything going, and gave it a shall we say a credibility which obviously FOBK would not have had, with his amazing background and so on and so forth. And so when I took over in 2018, we had this amazing history already, so it was quite easy to move on in that sense, to try and put more structure to the organization and start doing some of these projects. So I think that history needs to be written down somewhere and celebrated. So and hopefully we can do that.
Is the power of community action, isn't it? Like you say, that and together with inspiring leadership. I think if it's just community action, maybe with not so much visionary leadership or consistent leadership, that it could have faltered too. Because you are blessed with both.
Yes.
You're blessed with both. And what I love too is the fact that you you collaborate with others, like you say, the Frame, the UBI, and the rest, which MNS. Which I think that way you don't need to have all the strengths yourself. You
absolutely
leverage on each other and to move forward, isn't it? I think that's brilliant.
Just to give you an idea, when I started this journey, I knew nothing about biodiversity. It's been an amazing journey, in the last couple of years, right? Learning from the scientists and learning from all this feedback. This has been phenomenal. So
it's really amazing. We have to thank you for being the guardian of this. It would have been so easy, and it would have been a very fragile position to be in, to just surrender. And it didn't happen, and I think we as a community of Kuala Lumpur, the larger community of Kuala Lumpur, must be very thankful for you and your group for obviously defending that boundary, at the same time presenting a template that works. That if it can work in Bukit Kiara, it can work in Bukit Jalil, it can work in other old estates as well. And the way you approach this is you look in, there is a process, there's an organic development which involves the community. And I think this is where, to answer Yipme's question, and as an outsider looking in, although we somehow played a very small role in what you do, but I think because of this, that the community is involved, you empower the local population, local populations are involved, so that it creates sustainability as well. And your journey is charted on scientific, clear evidence.
And that's important.
And you bring and you rally the experts to come on board. You rally the residents, the community to come on board, and you rally the politicians. Like it or not, the word politician, unfortunately, conjures different kinds of responses. But in this particular case, I think we are also very blessed with the right people representing the people in the community. So putting aside partisan politics, and looking at the individuals, I think you must give credit to your current member of parliament as well.
Absolutely.
Who stood and nailed to get where she is. She's extremely a brave person. So the combination of all this community, the history behind this, the leadership, sustainability, the handing over of leadership from one to another. And I think that this is something that's really praiseworthy. Maybe you want to
I do want to welcome friends. I think there are some friends who actually live in Bukit Kiara within this group. or Hari, or anyone who want to, or
Taman
Tun, who may want to ask any questions, friends. Feel free to unmute and just ask, because we're not such a large group. Feel free to do that.
You know, I must admit that, you know, looking at that plan of the golf course,
yeah,
I don't play golf. It's a 36. The reason why I don't play golf is for this reason, you know, that you've got 36 holes, 38 holes, I think, 36 holes, right? That's a golfer. And for that, and it serves, and it's taken so much land, more land than actually where you actually draw the box for that green lung. They've actually devoured so much of the land for so few.
Yes,
you know, so
indeed.
few people, you know.
Yeah, it's not accessible, you know, to the majority of us. Yeah, so you know, it's crazy. Yeah, exactly.
I remember protesting about golf, and this person was saying, "You should be so happy with us. We are keeping the place green for y'all."
It's like somebody saying they should paint the road green, right?
Lei Chin, do you have a question?
Yes. Hello,
please.
good evening, everyone. Okay. Thank you very much. I love Bukit Kiara because I do hash runs there, and we are a responsible group that will pick up the papers after the run. Okay. Now, two questions is one. How are you addressing the high fence within the Kiara area? Because that also will obstruct the animals' movement, no? And two is, are you handling the mountain bikers? They really tear down the terrain, no? No young shoots can grow. They really abuse.
Okay, let me start with the first question. In terms of the fencing, this came up suddenly some years ago, basically to try and demarcate the 400 acres to some extent. Unfortunately, this fencing was put up to basically divide the green lung from the other potential areas, which I suppose, you know, are privately owned or have development potential. And you're right, Lei, the fencing, once it was put up, basically started to create a barrier for a natural movement of the animals and snakes and so on and so forth. And there have been many records of these issues at the interfaces. So of course, there were a lot of protests with this. So the first thing which we tried to do was, of course, this fencing had gone up. It was not going to be taken away. So the initial approach was to try and get regular openings in the fencings, so that there could be places where, you know, there could be movement of the of the fauna and the various amphibians and so on and so forth. So that was discussed, but wasn't systematically done. You know, so there has been some attempts to do this, and this is another dialogue which we're still having with JLN, and hopefully, if we are able, this is where again we don't have the data at the moment to show how these things are being affected. So this is where our next project comes in. You know, we are talking about, or we are thinking about, doing a wider biodiversity study in Bukit Kiara. And then, you know, if we do that and we start gathering data, and then we can use the evidence to show how important this is, how important it is to remove that fence, or have, I think if you do a study, you can actually find where are those crossing points. Then, you know, you can start having openings at those crossing points and so on. So a lot has to be done, but we are trying hard. Hopefully, with the roundtable engagement we're going to have in the next couple of months, we can try and get the authority to convince them to start looking and thinking about this. But from our side, we are trying to look at funds to do a bigger study on this, and this is something which is we are hoping we can actually move forward with. On your second question, on the bikers. Actually, I think there is a lot of misunderstanding about the role of the bikers. Firstly, we have to go back into the history. There are many trails in Bukit Kiara. If you open up any of the major apps, the Google apps, Komoot, for example, or All Trails and so on, you will see there are quite a few trails in Bukit Kiara, and most of those trails are actually biking trails. The reason for that is that in the going back well before, I think in the 90s, the original people who opened up the Kiara Green Lung, I'm not talking about the secondary forest, which has developed over that time. Remember, the government took over in 75. So from 75 to about 95, there's already 20 years. And, the Green Lung and the secondary forest was already developing. And so it was the bikers who actually came in, the original bikers, to set up trails within the Green Lung. Okay. And very interestingly, the original trails which were set up with international standards. In other words, they followed certain protocols. They did the trails that with certain slopes, limits, and so on and so forth. They had what you call water breaks in the. If you actually go into the, and we all use it all the time, the hikers. Actually, it's very well designed trails, by the bikers, and on top of that, over the last since '95 when it was all set up initially, and then other trails were developed over a 30-year period. Those trails have been maintained by the bikers and by volunteers, right? Not by JLN, not by DBKL, not by government, not by money from the local authority. All the trails, the wooden platforms, the small bridges, everything is changed every so many. I think the 7-year cycle. Many of the timber has to be replaced. All of that is done by the community. Fundraising, buying the hardwoods, and doing all of these things. So, to some extent, I think when we complain about the bikers using this, I think there has to be a recognition that part of this, the fact that trails are there, are to do with the bikers. But of course, there are a whole new generation of bikers who have got no history about this, right? They don't understand the significance of how this trail is done, and why it was important to treat it in a certain way, and so on and so forth. So that is something which falls back to us. It's a community education thing, and we are working very closely with TRACS, which is the Trails Association of Kuala Lumpur, where the bikers work. Whereas in the past we were all working very separately. We have a very good communication with them now. We're trying to see how we can develop common protocols. And then, because it can be dangerous, because the bikers and the hikers are using these trails at the same time, is to develop principles of etiquette, and so on and so forth. So all of this takes time, and we are trying very hard. But I think the starting point should be that we recognize that these trails are there because of efforts by certain groups of people. We cannot then say, hey, look, we are going to deny bikers to use these trails. We can't do that. We need to see how we can symbiotically, work with the different communities to protect, the Green Lung, as well as to make sure that everything is safe. But also, if we stick to the trails, those trails which have been organized, the impact on the biodiversity is there, of course, but it's limited. The problem is, and this is where it's become, because there are a lot of hiking groups. And so many new trails have been done. And unfortunately, these new trails have not followed the protocols. They are not people who have got the experience to do it correctly, and so on and so forth. So that's another area of training which we need to do, because we cannot stop this, unfortunately. People do their own thing. But if we can empower people with the right knowledge, things can be done right. But we're also trying to get the local authority, JLN, to get a bit more involved, because I think we need to have a certain amount of controls in the trails, because otherwise, of course, it will affect the biodiversity, because there is a limit to how much the Green Lung can take. So it's a long answer to your question, Regine. I hope that gives some background to it. And if you're interested, we are trying very hard to engage with the various parties, and maybe you can get involved with one of our committees where we can start to look at getting this information together, so that we can do some training, some dissemination, and so on and so forth, so that we can all use this trails safely.
Dr. Kriban, I'm just thinking the amount of work this group of people, you and your team, is doing. Do you have full-time people, staff, working on this?
Okay. Well, in the last couple of months, we have got a part-time person to come on board on a half day a week basis. Sorry, half a week, 2 days a week basis, and that's been very helpful. But we really need to go into to having full-time resources, because otherwise it's very difficult to keep this level of activities.
Yeah, but the fact that you've already achieved so much, and only recently you have someone who come in part-time, speaks a lot about the spirit of volunteerism in the entire, it's amazing that you have achieved so much with so little,
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Actually, maybe I should just share, who are in our committee, so that everybody knows. We have a committee. Can you see the slide?
Yes.
Of course, Tan Sri remains as our advisor. I'm president at this point in time. Dr. Kali, some of you may know, he is very involved with GEC, very passionate about water bodies, and has been very instrumental, in fact, in some of the work which has been done in Bukit Kiara in maintaining the pristine water bodies, and he's been involved in this efforts for at least 20 years in Kiara. So he's on our committee and very committed and very knowledgeable. He tells me that the water in Bukit Kiara at the source is actually drinkable. It's what does it call it? The class 1, water source or something. It's quite amazing, and a lot of that is to do with the fact that they have been, monitoring this over many years to make sure that it's done properly. Peter, many of you may know, he's been very involved in Kiara Bukit Kiara for many years, Friends of Bukit Kiara for many years. A real stalwart. And in fact, I suppose our repository of knowledge about Bukit Kiara, he's the one, he's the go-to for the history, right? He knows everything about that. And his memory is just amazing. He's a treasure at this point in time. He's doing a lot of work in these connections with the other green lungs. He's very passionate about that, and he's doing that. Mei-Ling is with World Bank. She's a very senior person at the World Bank here. Lives in Taman Tun. We were able to fortunately get her involved, and she's been making some amazing contributions also. She's been very involved with me on the putting together the initial proposal for the Bukit Kiara, the Fly for Life study, for example, with her experience at with the World Bank and proposals and so on. I think we were able to do this quite professionally. So that's good. Karen, who also lives in Taman Tun, she has got an IT background. She's been working with on various things now, studying and doing an education degree, and very involved in our multimedia side of things. She's very talented in the artistic side, so she also keeps all of our Instagram and our website updated and so on and so forth. So she's been very key in that sense. Clinton is a long-term person in the RA, TTDI RA. He's the vice president at this point in time of the TTDI RA, and involved. And so, if you think about the history of our involvement as a community, he's been there right from the beginning, day one, right? So, this is the I think the strengths we have, unfortunately. Don, you may all know, he's been our stalwart of the TRK fight against the judiciary review and so on. He's a lawyer by background, but now works in the finance industry. He, for the last 6-7 years, has been basically very involved in the fight which we had with Taman and Kiara. So very knowledgeable, very invested in the Green Lung. And fortunately, we were able to convince him also to sit with us. Of course, he's very busy, but he does his contributions there. Assuming as a lawyer, lives also in Taman Tun. She retired some years ago because of her children, and has been very involved with the Firefly study, with the citizen science approach and so on, and has been really helping to spearhead that side of the study in the last couple of months. Avinash runs an IT company, so he's helped to set up our IT infrastructure, get some of our stuff, in terms of the things we need to done. He's a passionate hiker, loves the Kiara, so if you want to get a serious hike, he's the man to go. So so it's quite a varied committee, and I think quite a lot of strengths there. But obviously, we will have new people coming on board in the next year. When we have our elections, probably in May or June this coming year. So this is the group and this is the team. And of course, there are many other people who have been helping who are not in the committee. Carol comes to mind. Linda, who is our admin person at this point in time. Carol was helping us with admin, but she's got a full-time job, so she's still there. And yes, a lady called Yuho, who also lives in Taman Tun, very passionate about the Green Lung, has been very involved with the ambassador program. So there are many other people like Hari, our ambassadors group. There's so it's been amazing that we've had this groundswell of support and people involved.
Yeah, you're clearly blessed with passionate, committed, and skillful people, and that helps to drive action, isn't it? So
indeed it does.
Yeah. So Aoyong had a comments there. Aoyong, would you like to convey your question or thoughts, Aoyong?
Thank you very much. I'm so sorry I'm not with my scarf.
That's right.
It's okay.
Right. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. Thank you so much for the beautiful sharing, Dr. Kribanandan.
Kriban, yes, Kriban is fine. Kriban is fine.
I have lived in Taman Tun for 15 years in Villa Flora. Yeah. And I'm a friend of Markiza. She's the one who brought me into Friends of Bukit Kiara.
Fabulous.
And a few events when YB Hannah Yo was there, I attended, but I'm not very active though.
Right. No, we'll have to get you activated.
but I keep in touch of what's happening with Taman Rimba, and it's amazing. I just love the people in Taman Tun, and I find them so energetic, and I'm so blessed to be here, to be with the community, and to be part of this drive of protecting our environment and our community for basically to look after the biodiversity and the humanity around here. So I'm very happy to hear this, and it was kind of a last minute when I saw Yuetni's post, and I said, I must get into this. So I did share with some of my friends. Right. But many of them has weddings tonight, so so
thank you for that. Thank you for that. Let's hope we can meet up sometime soon. Yeah, please,
yes, of course, yes.
Please send me a message.
I can say hello when I see you in the street.
Indeed.
Dr. Kriban, Alawiya herself is a force to reckon with. So when you meet her, she will tell you about all the amazing work that she does herself. Yeah.
Indeed, fantastic. Good. Yeah. I look forward to that.
Yeah. So with that, I'm going to ask all of you to unmute, and with you on, it will be brilliant. And help me thank Dr. Kriban for this amazing session today. Shall we start?
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. Really, it's so enlightening for us. And I think you have created ambassadors in all of us.